In this section, I'm going to talk about some groundbreaking research that comes from Byron Sharp in his books on how brands grow. One of the biggest things that we learn from Byron Sharp is that conventional marketing wisdom, the mainstream thinking in marketing, is actually very wrong in many different ways. Now, my personal thought is that conventional marketing wisdom, which often comes from Philip Kotler, who is an expert in professional services marketing, I think it is true, and it holds true when you're trying to do something like market a small marketing agency or some small professional services firm. However, when you get into product marketing and you get into scaling up, these things that are generally held as true are actually quite wrong, and are going to steer you in the wrong direction. So what are these commonly held beliefs? Well, the first is that you should focus on retention because acquisition is supposedly more expensive. But Byron Sharp tells us that acquisition is actually the key to growth. That's what you should be focusing on. And one of the reasons is that things like loyalty programs generally don't work. And loyalty is to some extent outside of your control. So your best chances at growth are really getting more people to buy your product, rather than focusing on retaining your existing customer base. Now, a second widely held belief in the marketing world is that you need to appeal to a narrow group of target customers, essentially the essence of target marketing, if you will. But what Byron Sharp shows us using a lot of data analysis is that really what you should be doing is targeting all category buyers, and that this is the key to scaling up. This is going to go against some really strongly held beliefs, perhaps among some of the people listening to this, if you've done marketing for a long time. But if you look at certain types of advertising that's designed to get reach through things like Facebook or LinkedIn ads, you realize it's actually pretty cost effective to target all category buyers. It's not super expensive. It may be inefficient in some ways, but the benefits of scale will probably outweigh the inefficiency. Okay, now a third commonly held belief in the marketing world is that you need to communicate what makes you better or different. So this is the obsession in product marketing around positioning, basically. So finding that one little thing to focus on, highlighting that in your marketing communications, really trying to communicate in a rational way to buyers why you're different, why you're better. But what Byron Sharp tells us is that really what you should be focusing is not how fundamentally you are different from competitors, but more how are you superficially different, and he uses the word distinctive. So these are things like, do you have a particular mascot that's identified with your brand, or a particularly strong logo? So it's more about superficial difference rather than fundamental difference. One of the reasons for this is that customers often have similar needs, regardless of whether they're your customers or competitors' customers. So talking about why you're different may actually just give people a reason not to buy from you. And if you're trying to scale up, you need to appeal to a broad set of customers. Now, I'm going to add my own thoughts on this, which is that most businesses at the top of their game have competitors that offer pretty much the same thing. Now, sometimes I run across these marketing gurus on LinkedIn and YouTube, etc., and they say, oh, you really need to talk about how you're different. You need to own some sort of unique position. But in reality, that's just not true. Highly successful companies have competitors that offer more or less the same product. So, for example, in the business consumer world, we have Coke and Pepsi, which are really not that different, fundamentally the same product. And then Coke comes out with a sugar-free product. Pepsi does the same thing. Then they come up with Coke Zero. Pepsi comes up with Pepsi Zero. So these companies are hugely successful, even though they're pretty much just doing what their competitors are doing. Is that wrong? No, it's actually one of the ways to maintain your market share, grow your market share, and maintain your profitability. And in the business-to-business world, even in professional services, we look at McKinsey and Bain. Are they fundamentally different? Well, you might pretend that there are differences, but really, McKinsey, Bain, Boston Consulting Group, they're offering pretty much the same thing to the same set of customers. So this emphasis on differentiation is highly overrated, especially in the product marketing world. So having a unique position is not really your end goal, despite a lot of widely held beliefs in this regard. What you're really trying to achieve is economies of scale so that you become part of an oligopoly that competes with products that are largely the same as yours. Market share is the most important factor when you're doing product marketing. It's not really about having some ultra special unique position, some blue ocean strategy. I think this steers people in the wrong direction, especially for those that are highly ambitious. And one of the reasons that I really resonate with the research of Byron Sharp is because it's consistent with my experience, where a lot of my key business financial success came from going after broader audiences, going with kind of all-in-one solutions that I marketed to customers, and that's been highly lucrative to me. The other thing is that I put a lot of faith in Bruce Greenwald and the research that you find in his book, Competition Demystified. So Bruce Greenwald is looking at value investors like Warren Buffett and trying to analyze how they choose profitable businesses to invest in. And it's those that have a moat. And the most powerful moat that you can have is economies of scale. So the strongest competitive advantage, the most sustainable one, is going to be economies of scale. So really, from a marketing perspective, that means achieving market share. And you don't really achieve huge market share with narrow targeting and narrow positioning. You have to have broader appeal, and you have to have broader targeting. So that's very consistent with some of what Byron Sharp is saying about why conventional marketing wisdom just doesn't work.